fashion hack. They keep on dissing me, my low dexterity. Wait until they hear the chorus. Sooner or later, the dice land on the table. You know that's what fables are made of. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. My main man did double damage with it. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. This is a critical hit. My main man did double damage with it. Oh yeah, it's a critical hit. My main man did double damage with it. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. It's a critical hit. Now it's wall to wall, watch your foes are falling, but it's time to pause, cause Mother Nature's calling. I'll be back in a second and I'll continue the reckoning. They will still be waiting for us, and the pressure grows to make a save and throw, to introduce some move, we turn the lights down low. My armor's exposed, I'm getting full of holes. Think I need another chorus. Sooner or later, the dice land on the table. You know that's what fables are made of. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. My main man did double damage with it. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. This is a critical hit. My main man did double damage with it. Oh yeah, it's a critical hit. My main man did double damage with it. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. It's critical. That ain't how we roll. Oh no, it ain't stolen. We on a roll. Hey, we on a rollin'. That ain't how we roll. Oh no, it ain't stolen. We on a roll. Hey, we on a rollin'. Sooner or later, the dice land on the table. You know that's what fables are made of. Oh yeah, it's a critical hit. My main man did double damage with it. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. This is a critical hit. My main man did double damage with it. Oh yeah, it's a critical hit. My main man did double damage. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. It's critical. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. This is a critical hit. Oh yeah, it's a critical hit. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. It's critical. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. My main man did double damage with it. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. This is a critical hit. My main man did double damage with it. Oh yeah, it's a critical hit. My main man did double damage with it. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. It's critical.
That's what I'm talking about. What's going on, everybody? I need to make sure that I don't hit my wrong button, because then I end up doing stuff that I don't mean to do. What? Don't turn that off, No More Kings. There's no need for more music from you. We've already got that music. What's going on, everybody? I literally hit the wrong button. I'm just like, I will make sure that I hit the wrong button that doesn't actually apply to anything, and that's what I ended up doing. But now we're there, so now I get to say, first of all, thank you, Nordvol, for the resub. I really appreciate it, man. Welcome to you, and welcome everybody to episode 25 of Masters of the Dungeon. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to our monthly D&D roundtable show, where we focus on game mastering and role playing and how to do those things better with myself and my co-host Little Red Dot. But before I introduce her and talk a little bit about the show today, I do want to remind everybody about ways to support us here, and then I have a couple of announcements that we've got going on. Yeah, that was No More Kings. Yes, it was Echo for sure. So just a couple of announcements though about stuff that is happening that you need to be aware of. So first of all, ways to support the stream, which Echo was kind enough to do. And by the way, welcome home, Echo. I'm glad to see that you are home and on the mend. First of all, of course, if you haven't done so already, please follow the channel. Check us out here as well on the YouTube, !ARV2 will get you over to my YouTube channel where you can check out past broadcasts of this. We have literally now over 2 years of content of Masters of the Dungeon. If you just watched one show a month, you could take the next 2 years. By the time you're done, the pandemic will be over. So that's that'll be a way to use up your time until that happens. But Masters of the Dungeon is over there, !ARV2 !ArvTube. !ArvCord is the Discord channel where you can hang out with the Arvanauts in between streams. We have just passed 200 people. We now have 200 members on the Discord, which is super awesome. And so please consider joining us over there. I'd really love to see how much that is picked up. !ArvCord for that. !ArvTweets is my Twitter where you can retweet the stream. I continue to gain some people over there who follow, which is nice. I tweet about a whole bunch of different stuff, including gaming and, politics sometimes, and certainly writing and teaching and my family and things. And I always try to tweet there when I'm going to be going live or shortly beforehand. !ArvTweets for that. And you can find all of that on my website, arvaneleron.com. I also want to point out, by the way, that on my website, arvaneleron.com, you can also find not only the schedule, but also Curse of Strahd, the Curse of Strahd audio podcast, which is now being audio edited by a new audio editor. So I'm very excited to say that we have a new audio editor, Gnomedic, Gnomedic, and I got his information from Little Red Dot, and it looks like he's going to work out great. We have the new show up there that we just posted, and so Gnomedic is going to be our new audio editor, so you may see him hanging around here and around the community a little bit. So I want to welcome him into the Arvanaut family and thank him for what's going to be awesome stuff, and already has been awesome stuff going forward. On the financial side, the Patreon is !ArvTreon. Good stuff for you and good stuff for the channel. Allows you to support the channel and allows you to also get cool stuff for yourself. That's basically it. Gnomedic. Yes. And I'll try to actually find, I should find a link to his Twitter. I did a bunch of other stuff. I have like a bunch of other things I have to announce. And so I have all of these sort of things over there, but hold on, I'll find it. It is, there we go. So the name is Gnome, but his Twitter account is Gnomedic. And so you should go over there and check him out. And also has a Twitch TV channel and all that kind of good stuff. So I was very excited about it. So why would a gnome want a medic? Well, you'd have to speak to him about that. I don't know. But yes. So again, the Patreon allows you to support the channel and support yourself, inspirations and things like that. So please consider jumping on board the Patreon. Would love to see that get north of 350. I would really like to increase everyone's pay and add pay and do all these things. But we need some, funding to make that happen. So the more that we're able to support on the Patreon and the subs, the more that we can do that sort of thing. And of course the shop, !Arv shop, where we have got right now stuff for the Infinity and Beyond D&D Curse of Strahd crew, and also have Adventures in Middle-earth with illustrations from Terry Toons. And I'm not going to give any more announcements to say, except you may see a few more of Terry's artistic creations may be connected to this channel in some way in the near future. You'll want to be on the lookout for it. I'm pretty excited about it so far. But anyway, so you can find that at !Arv shop, soon to be Esper Genesis material there as well. And then last but certainly not least, the sub button right above the video window, sitting at about 46 subs. Again, thank you for the resub, Nordwolf. I'm trying to move that up to 50 and beyond, because that also goes back into the channel and helps us as well. And you can get these awesome emotes. And again, there may be some more cool things coming up soon on the emote side, so you will see, but that's happening, so you can support us there with that. Last thing is the publishing stuff. ! First of all, library, that will allow you to get a copy of my Tales and Tomes from the Forbidden Library from Alligator Alley Entertainment. Right now, Alligator Alley Entertainment, which is owned by Brian Dalrymple, the Adventure Game Store, which he owns, is currently shuttered down in Florida, along with a lot of other non-essential businesses, and so we're really trying to help out. So one of the ways you can help out, of course, is to support them by doing things like, for example, buying, my 5e Adventure and buying other stuff from them as well. They really do great stuff. It's a good team, and I really want to make sure that we can try to support our friends and family and community members as much as we can, so please consider jumping on board with that. ! Greyshade KS is the Greyshade Kickstarter, about which more details are going to be coming soon. And so I didn't know that he was a legit medic. That's even awesome. Even more awesome. I didn't know that. So anyway, yes, you should check that out, because the Greyshade Kickstarter is going to be coming hopefully sooner rather than later, somewhat on hold because of everything that's going on, but it will be back sooner rather than later, and I cannot wait for that. And last but certainly not least, Icarus, ! Icarus will allow you to pre-order a copy of my Icarus graphic novel and Jelinek graphic novels. I cannot tell you how good this art is. I'm serious. Every time I get new stuff, I'm just more and more excited. And it's just amazing. So you definitely want to check that out, because it's great stuff, and the more that we can help with them, the better. Now, speaking of Athos Arts, for this, I'm going to Get rid of that, and I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm going to turn on that. Hello, everyone. Good to see you all. I need to mention that in addition to what they're doing right now, Athos, right this moment as we speak, is doing an Ask Me Anything on reddit.com/r/fantasy. They're doing one as we speak, so I want to jump over there. That link right there will bring you to the Ask Me Anything. Now, they've had actually a very good response. They've got something like 250 some odd comments, 36 upvotes. But if you lovely people do anything related to Reddit, if you wouldn't mind jumping over there, you will find that I have had I teach all of today, so I really have not had a chance to be over there much, but I went on there. I put a little mention about Icarus and a little plug for me personally. We had someone who asked a question and I responded, and I need to get back and respond again. But if people want to jump on and add a couple of extra comments and upvotes and things like that, that's something which you can do for freeze. And all of that is helpful to Athos. Of course, they're not just about my work. They have a lot of work, including some really awesome anthologies. They really do great stuff. I've talked about this before. Obviously, I'm biased because I know Chris and Emily personally, and they're great people. But beyond that, I mean, they really do good work. And this is the time, that we need to support these publishers. We need to support these small presses as much as we can, because this is where we go for solace in difficult moments. It is the art that supports us, and so anytime that we can help them would be the better. So I'm really happy that they've been able to do stuff, and that they've been able to continue to keep going on. But it's not easy for them, and so any support that we can give them would be appreciated. So head over to Reddit if you can and do that, because that would be lovely. And Rock God's 100% right. Watching shows, reading books and comics, playing games, looking at pictures, it was the artist. You said it, man. And Rock God knows from where he speaks, because we're talking about a top photographer here. And so, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how ArvCon actually is going to be coordinated. I mean, it's set for late May. I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know if, we're going to be starting to lift any of the social distancing things at that point, at which point maybe people will be stir crazy and they won't want to be inside doing any of this. But I'm hoping that's not the case. And I'm hoping that they will be willing to, give this support, because it is a valuable, important thing. And even with all the people suffering, and they are suffering from the coronavirus, all of these other things, including the people that we're going to be supporting this year because of Kilobyte, and that is research into diabetes and diabetes, hopefully moving towards a cure of diabetes down the line. All of that continues to happen even when the rest of the world is happening. So hopefully we'll get that support as well. And yeah, Coven, of course, I keep my mom and your mom in my thoughts, because I'm really sorry to hear about that with the dogs. I mean, that I lost my dog Lilo to that, and I lost my dog Maggie before to that, and you know how obviously near and dear that subject is to this community. So of course, many thoughts to your mom, and I hope the puppy, I hope things work out for the puppy and she can be okay. Your mom can be okay as she gets through that. Very sorry to hear about that. Okay, now I want to make one quick announcement here about schedule, and I have a very special announcement about a new show coming to the channel. But I want to make this announcement first about scheduling tomorrow and on Saturday. So tomorrow night, I'm going to have my usual Friday stream, but I am not going to be doing Operencia. Tomorrow night, I am happy to say that I'm going to be doing a cooperative game with Mr. Zach Clay, and we have figured out the game. The game is going to be called TikTok. It is a 2-player puzzle game, and it reminds me a little bit of Keep Talking and No One Explodes. That game where basically one person is looking at this bomb and the other person is looking at instructions to defuse the bomb, and they have to communicate back and forth. It reminds me a little bit of that, these puzzles that require sort of 2 people to work together. And I think it's going to be fun, and we were thinking about wanting to do a co-op game, and so why not? This seems like a good time to do it. So we're going to do that tomorrow. It'll be a special fun little thing. That'll start at 9 p.m. Eastern. And in fact, now that I think about it, I need to make sure that I add Zach Clay to the schedule. So there we go. Break the glass. Yeah, exactly. Like, do this, don't do that. Yeah, I've watched some pretty funny streams actually with that. So, but anyway, so that's happening tomorrow night, Friday at 9 p.m. And then Saturday, we have got more Operencia, The Stolen Sun. Really enjoyed my conversation with Christopher Baker, and we are closing towards the end of that game. I'd say we're only about 2, maybe 3 sessions left before we move on to the next game, which is going to be continuing with Detroit Become Human. On Tuesday, we have got at noon Eastern, Eastern, we will be back with the Patreon-fueled game of the month, which is Kingdom of Amalur this month. And then at 4 p.m. Eastern, I'll be over at GOG with Pen and Pixels doing more of The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. And then Tuesday evening, to wrap up a very busy month of March, we will have our Esper Genesis session. So we've got a lot of stuff happening. It's going to be cool. I can't wait. It's going to be all exciting. Now, I am very happy to announce that we have a new show coming to the channel next month. And the new show is as follows. Many of you will know that I stream, of course, on GOG, and I stream with, periodically, the GOG stream team leader, Pyronjade, plays D&D with myself and the rest of some other GOG stream team members. Mike Smith, who's not a member of the GOG team now, but was in the past, Darksaber 2K, who is a current member, and Tasty Chai, who are all current members. So we do that once a month. We have a great time. So I'm happy to announce that starting next month, and I even have a date, Friday the 24th of April, will be the debut of Pyronjade DMing a new 5e campaign called War of the Burning Sky. This is going to start at 3 p.m. Eastern, and it is going to typically run for 3 to 4 hours once a month. It is going to be a European hour-friendly 5e campaign. So all the players in it are going to be European. All the players in it are going to be awesome streamers or awesome role players, because I already know most of them, I think, that are involved. And she's going to be making the announcement. We will be making the announcement of the cast and all that stuff coming soon. But it is a new campaign that she is going to be running, and I'm very excited for it because, as you know, I'm always looking for new content, and I'm excited to have new European content up there as well. Now, I will not be able to, again, this is content that does not involve me. I will be, able to watch some of it and so forth, but Pyron is going to be running this, and I'm very excited to have her do this. We're looking at a campaign which will be running for some months. And, we're hoping to recommence Hearts of Wulin, do season 2 of Hearts of Wulin again. And of course, we still have Emberwind. We still have the community D&D. We've got other stuff, and I'm continuing to increase content on the channel, but I'm excited to have that as well. When do we get a campaign where I'm a player, not the GM? When I get another 24 hours in every 24-hour day, man, I'm tapped. I would love to be able to play in a campaign more often. But speaking of that, I will say that there will be more Speculate and Twitch channel crossover stuff coming in the near future. So you will be, you'll want to be in the you'll want to wait for that because that'll be happening. It's a good idea, actually, Terry getting her own art show. There will be Penguins USS Norway. I have no doubt of that. I've got to think about that. I need to talk to Terry about that. No, you are going to be seeing some more things about Terry very soon on this channel, but not necessarily an art show, at least not so far. But yes, that's the deal with that. So I'm very excited. So new show coming to the channel Friday the 24th at 3 p.m. Eastern is the beginning of War of the Burning Sky with Pyronjade as the DM. Now, with that said, well, thank you, The Stray Sheep Bar. That is a great name. Okay, let me see. Echo. Deeply appreciate all this work given the last 6 days incarcerated hospital. Return today. It's far and fine. Logistics is hell. Impossible to figure out. I managed to have my first bio break while standing. I've just ate 3 slices of homemade pizza courtesy of Mama Echo. So peeps, I'm back to semi-normality. First of all, congratulations, Echo, on getting back, and keep on keeping on, man. I'm glad to see that you're on the mend. That's really great. So welcome back. And yeah, Kevin, I mean, I love doing it. Don't get me wrong. I would like to be able to play a more consistent character. It's just, time, man. Time is the thing. But thank you, Stray Sheep Bar, for the host. I appreciate it. And Thundercats is always a good thing. So yes, those are my announcements. Very exciting. A lot of good stuff coming to the channel. More to come. But that is it. I've already taken way too long because I had too much stuff to babble about. But now I'm ready to go, and I will introduce my indefatigable and irrepressible and impossible to lower energy, impossible to wear out. And that, of course, is my spectacular co-host, who is wait for it, right there. And that, of course, is Little Red Dot, who is the hardest working person in show business, as we said. But we're all hanging in there. We were exchanging war stories about being tapped out and everything. But Dot is back. Hi, Dot. How are you? How's the last couple days been?
It's good. It's been real busy. Saw you all on Saturday. Told you, things were crazy with my job. Things are still crazy with my job, but not in a bad way. Busy is better than not busy. So, hey, chat. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to talk about some things. I've closed out literally just moments ago. I closed out a campaign, so I closed out 2 campaigns this week, which means I'm prepping for new campaigns. So I got things to talk about. Arv.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, this is a very good segue because I did not get a chance to actually put up what we were going to do, but we've done this before at this point. So given the fact that we know how this works, I'm going to start with you. So tell me about something awesome that just happened with the closeout of the campaign, or if you want to talk about that, or the new one you're prepping. You can choose either one.
Well, the prep is slow go, so I don't think I'm ready for that. Well, we'll talk about the prep maybe later. I'll even chat about the game a little bit more. How about that?
Okay.
So, well, I just closed out my North Sea. That was on Tuesday. North Sea Epilogues. That was my Viking game.
Season 1 only, though. I mean, like
season 1. Yeah, there have been begs for season 2, so we're gonna figure that out.
Okay.
But my Coriolis campaign has been a bit of a personal pride. I'm gonna call it a personal pride over the last few weeks. I've talked about this game on this show before. I have, and I love it. I never thought a game would inspire me so much as a storyteller. In terms of just like the personal piece of it. At the start of the campaign, I told a story about how I got the name Little Red Dot. Like why that became my moniker.
Mm-hmm.
Have I ever told you this story?
I think you have, but I would like to hear it
did.
Again.
Great. Oh, okay. I was going to keep it secret. I was going to make everybody go watch it.
No.
No, don't do it. But it really is a story about how the concept of my place in the universe was both insignificant and significant. You all know the poster that was in every science classroom ever that was of the Milky Way.
Yep.
That had the little dot and it was like, you are here.
Mm-hmm.
So there were some psychedelics involved, but I saw that poster at a friend's house in college and had a complete like mental moment is what I'll call it, where I came out the other side and was so obsessed with this concept that I was just this little dot, this little red dot in the midst of this massive universe. And it helped me at a time where I was really bored with being an artist. And I was trying to figure out what it meant to be an artist. And I was surrounded by so much artistic ego in college at SCAD. So it was just this really interesting thing, and it kind of became this brand, and I launched my Insta, and it has ebbed and flowed into many things, but it has finally settled here. And it seemed very relevant in Coriolis about this idea that darkness between the stars is ever encroaching, that we are just insignificant. And tonight's game closing game was really interesting because all my players were like, we did this thing. We spent 12 weeks like really building up to this. And then they all kind of were like, but we also feel like we haven't accomplished anything. And that was such a giant metaphor for me. And to see it in so poignantly, right? They have faced these horrific monsters, these darkness monsters. They face humans that have become corrupt by the things that they've seen out in space. Just these horrific things to come all the way back to civilization, to this massive space station Coriolis, to find out that people are more inhumane than the darkness monsters. Right? Taking others. And so that was basically how I set the season up. And it landed so poignantly at the end, and my players got it. And it made me such a proud GM because my shows are known to be a little comedic, and they tend to lean on the side of, comedy. So to be able to drive a hyper realistic sci-fi campaign to a point where my players are really understanding this like underlying themes and metaphors. So I guess it's not really one moment as much as just a proud ending moment.
Yeah.
As we move into the second season, it just all really came together. And it was thanks so much to my players for really like owning character and incredible role play and those kinds of things. But then it also just made me very excited. It all worked out.
Oh, that's great. And that's actually, I was going to talk a little bit about this with the topic of the show, but I will use my example to combine with yours to go into the topic that I was thinking about. So, there were no dancing girls, but there was at least cake. But a dark brooding cake. A cake about the sort of the presence of humanity. They're the inhumanity of man. So the thing that I'm going to use actually is an example that came from our Curse of Strahd Infinity and Beyond session on Saturday. Because one of the things that we were in the midst of was Dot, of course, traveled as her character of Agatha Massey with two characters, first with Casimir, and then ended up going with Rob's character, Mason. and traveled to these two alternate planes of existence where they met several dark forces. As it turns out, the dark powers that had
Why not
themselves.
Barovia?
Yeah, I mean, right? Like it's listen, that's how you do things. But these are the powers that had given Strahd his power to begin with. And so they traveled there, and once they realized that, it was like, oh snap, like it just got real. But the thing that struck me, that I had expected that there was going to be, there's not a, I mean, definitely this crew definitely has a fun time. But listen, like Strahd itself is not designed to be like a super like woohoo, like it's not a joy and it's not a joy and rainbows type of campaign. But there's certainly, this crew can have fun at times. But I had expected that going into this, that there was a possibility that there would be some fairly intense moments associated with, for example, the one of the gifts that they were first offered, which was this gift of being able to raise the dead, which had direct applications to what Casimir was dealing with. What I did not expect for me was that the thing that I was going to end up being most uncertain and concerned about was relating to one of the dark forces, one of the dark powers that they met, which was this Queen of Poxes, which is in this sort of disease-ridden swamp. And I mean, under the current circumstances, given what we are all globally facing, it was not necessarily my intention to be like, hey, let's all talk about disease and people dying in terrible circumstances. Like it really, and so I was kind of like not sure what to make of that, as I would have expected. Dot and Rob, played their characters beautifully. They're wonderful role players. I wasn't surprised about that. But I was curious about how people were going to react to it. And one of the interesting things was that someone pointed out that, well, it's a horror campaign, it's gothic, blah, 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 blah. But they were like, this is actually good because it gives us a chance to kind of, and I'm not going to paraphrase it poorly, but some to the effect of, we're going to work this out through watching how it's handled in alternative ways and by alternative people. So other characters dealing with the same things that we are. And I had this kind of revelation that for much of my life, I have always been nervous about, going into something that might be too intense for people, about over pushing, about, driving people beyond where I think it's reasonable for them to go at a given moment. And that kind of limit setting and kind of care, I think, is useful in a lot of ways. And I think it means that I try very hard not to hurt people unintentionally. And so that works. But one thing that I've really had to work on in my own GMing is being willing to, and Curse of Strahd did this, and I knew it would to a degree, I just didn't know how, push my willingness to push the envelope and stretch the level of comfort that some people might have. And I try to do it with sensitivity, and I would never do this without people that are good role players and good friends, which is what everybody in that campaign is. But doing that really struck me, and this is what reminded me about what you were just talking about, Dot, about the importance of vulnerability in GMing. And I want to talk a little bit about that, because generally you get the sense when you read a lot of books about it that our job is to referee. It's to sort of stay above the fray. It's to not get so invested that we kind of lose our sense of proportion and that we, find ourselves unable to keep balance. But I wonder whether or not there is something to be said for vulnerable game mastering play, where being willing to expose how you as a game master feel emotionally really has an impact on the quality of play for your players. In other words, being willing to feel with them sadness, grief, horror, and triumph and success, and to not play as much of the neutral balls and strikes umpire as much as you play someone who is emotionally invested with the players. Now, many caveats, not all the time, you have to know when to do this. But this is just something I've been thinking quite a bit about the need for more emotionally resonant gameplay, which requires vulnerability on my part in a way that I hadn't thought about before. So I wanted to throw that out there about whether you think that's true or ridiculous and nuts, because it seems like both of us had.
I was about to say, if you're tossing it to me, I'm going to tell you it's not ridiculous. I actually find myself sometimes more vulnerable as a GM than a player. Right? Because so much of your job as a GM, we've talked about this, is facilitation, but you're building a world, and there's no way that you can disconnect that world from yourself. Like, you can't, right? It's what actors try to do.
Yeah.
Right. But we're not really even in the act. We're more in the director role, right? Without actually properly directing it per se. But our job is vision and theme and metaphor and all of these things that that their characters can attach themselves to and grow in and thrive in or rot in or whatever. And that takes personal, and it's why I'm so proud of Coriel, is because I think for the first time I'm learning that too, that like what made me so passionate about even actually the last two, even Heim, like I got choked up at the end of Heim because there was something about it, this idea of seeking home and shelter, as somebody that has, as an artist, always been a black sheep from the podunkiest ass Southern town, never accepted, very much on the outskirts, which I think a lot of us can relate to.
Of course.
And so this idea of their clan being one that's not based in blood, right? Having a family that you choose, that accepts you, and paving the way, a path for your family, right? Which is what Heim was about. And then Coriolis being this conversation about humanity and a giant metaphor for the dark things of the world that seep into our lives that we cannot control, and our place in all of that, our insignificance in all of it, being a very vulnerable and personal thing that I struggle with. And so it only makes sense, in my opinion, for GMs sometimes to put that on the table. And I know there are lighthearted campaigns. They're out there just for shits and giggles. It happens. But I think the ones that I'm learning that I like the most and that I feel most fulfilled with as a GM, and most involved at the table. That's the other thing. You want to feel involved. You don't want to feel like you're against your players. Like I really enjoy the moment where I get to come to the table in an equal way and still feel like a player. Right. I am a player. I'm just playing everything else, That's it. Yeah. They're just playing everything else. And so I think that vulnerability that you're talking about, that place of like really looking in the mirror as a GM and facing doubts, emotions, troubles, and even sometimes the joys of life, the things we love that bring us joy is, it's like half the joy I'm learning of doing the job.
Yeah, it's very wise words. And I think, the other thing too is being willing to be vulnerable in particular emotional axes that you haven't before. So even if you were to say, I'm willing to like be sad and cry in front of people, like, are you willing to be repulsed a little bit? Are in certain circumstances, are you willing to be angry, not at your players, but at the circumstances of the world? Are you willing to admit shame or guilt? These are all parts of the human condition also. And so, and again, of course there are limits to this, and this is not something to be kind of thrown around, but it's also not something to be kept forever. And I mean, I guess one of the things that struck me is that it took me a long time to figure this. It was not really until the birth of my daughter which is 12 years ago now, that I took a major turn as a writer, in my view, because I was writing stuff for the first time that had a real level of emotional resonance, because I was, I always had it there, but I was always afraid to show it because I got, I usually got it slapped back in my face when I was younger. And so I kind of just was like, nope, like I just keep everything seems fine. Everything's fine up here. And having her really allowed me to kind of tap into that as a writer. From a GMing point of view, having the chance to go through something similar like that and to realize this really is the same lesson. And you said it yourself about acting, like the best actors are the ones who can be emotionally vulnerable with the audience in a certain way. And I, and of course I know that, but I mean, it's one thing to know it, and it's another thing to actually do it. And it's the same thing with music. You tend to be more effective when you're singing on stage, when you're performing on stage, when you could be emotionally vulnerable with your audience. And you tend to be more effective even as a professor, as a teacher, when you can be emotionally vulnerable with your students at the moments that it's important within work. You need to be careful because your students are not your friends and you don't want to treat them the same way. So I want to be very careful about how I'm positioning this. But it is true that students are looking for you, especially now.
Teaching is a vulnerable thing.
Yes. And they're looking
Teaching is
for
vulnerable.
You. Exactly. And they're looking for you right now, in a moment now, to know, are you having the same human doubts and fears that we have? And like, I'm so conscious of this when I teach my online class. All my classes are online now. And teaching my students, and, I'm dealing with all people that are 17 to 21 roughly, right? And I'm dealing with a lot of students who are designed by society or trained by society to act like they've got it all together at all times. And they don't. Nobody has it together at the age of 17. Christ, I didn't have it together when I was 17, 21, 31. Like, none of us had it all together then. And so figuring out a way to reach out to them and be like, how are you doing? Are you frightened? How are you feeling? Can we talk a little bit about that? It's almost like the doctors do no harm. And this is part of it. Make sure that you're reaching out to them first. So it's the same lesson. And I guess it just amazed me that it like all of a sudden it started clicking to me in recent weeks and months that this is part of what we need to do as DMs and GMs also, is being able to sort of click into our own emotional vulnerabilities and play them out within the games, because that helps us, but it also helps our players to be able to kind of connect, and an audience too, to be able to resonate with what it is that we're doing. So I don't know. Maybe this is something that should have become clear to me much earlier, and maybe I'm just dumb and need to have the same lesson taught to me by being bashed in the face by it repeatedly. But yeah, yeah, exactly, Rock God. I mean, and that's the thing, right? Like, the goofy, you're going to start taking a turn, and I'm sure that will happen. Like, even the sort of humorous stuff. In fact, I find the humorous stuff is often even more powerful when it has moments of resonance. Like the D&D with GOG campaign that I run is pretty, humorous and light in a lot of ways. But there have been moments where they've gone into these very, very resonant, powerful places precisely because it's not necessarily what you would have expected from that campaign. And the reverse, like when, Dot and the rest of them in Infinity and Beyond laugh a lot, they do sometimes laugh a lot because Jesus, Barovia is a really depressing and dark place. So if you don't do that, you're just not going to be able to make it through. And it really is amazing how those things work. So
we'd just have to cut the show in half. Like we'd have to have 2 hours of seriousness and we don't have to go to bed because
yeah, we just couldn't. Like there's no, exactly,
emotionally
there's no
you can't carry something. I mean, take it from somebody that does a 4-hour VTM show once a week.
Jesus.
It wears
That's
and
because
then
you're
I
a
turn
glutton
around
for punishment,
and
Dot,
you
right?
know what? I turn around and do Barovia right after. Stratus right after that VTM. So my Saturdays are dark AF. I know. It didn't mean to happen that way. It just did.
It just did. So let me ask you this, though. That actually brings me up a very good point that I want to ask you about. And you're a great person to ask. And that is, so we talked about emotional vulnerability. Where is for you the circuit breaker, not for your players, I know you can handle players, for you as a GM, where do you reach the point where you're like, okay, but here I can't go past this spot? And I'm not even talking about giving me a specific, like, well, I can't talk about this because it upsets me. I mean more, is there a part where you're going along and you're like, there's a little warning sign that I'm getting that if I keep going down this path, this is not going to end up well for me, and I do need to kind of set a limit for myself. Because if we're going to talk about emotional vulnerability, we also need to talk about safety for us. So, so how do you do that?
I always tell my crew that safety tools aren't just in place for them.
They're in place
safety
for you.
Tools are also in place for me. I'm still a player at that table. Am I playing a different role? Yeah, but I'm still playing a role. And it, you can't assume where your players are going to go. Right. And one of them may take it into a direction that you were not expecting. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's really in a nutshell for me is the safety tools are for me as much as they are for my players. And so if we get to a point where I'm feeling uncomfortable, I'm going to let them know, hey gang, I'm going to reroute this conversation. One of the reasons that we use safety tools is because you can't plan to be uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. You can't plan to cross a line. You cannot plan for what other people are going to say or do. And so they're in place so that everyone feels safe. And I feel like as long as there are safety tools at the table, I feel safe with my players to drive story and expect that if they bring something up, or if we end up in a situation where I'm not comfortable, that I would be able to pump the brakes, I guess, mm-hmm. and realize that vulnerability. And it's interesting. We've had this conversation a couple times. I have this thing about method acting. Yes. And that's a whole other stream for a whole other day. But one of the things about method acting, and this is kind of where this comes from, is there's a difference between being vulnerable on a stage with your audience as an actor mm-hmm. and putting yourself through torture.
Okay. What's the difference? Let's hit it on the head.
Right? I think vulnerability is about empathy, which is what theater and storytelling is about.
Yes.
I'm vulnerable because you're also vulnerable. You're sitting there watching me, right? There, the live experience of everything from sports to theater, it is all vulnerable. We come together in a place where We are all sharing in a moment. And yes, I compared sports and theater because they are the same.
Mm-hmm.
We come together as a group of people to watch other people do incredible things.
Sure.
Sports give us one level of empathy. They do, of like respecting the body and what the human physique is capable of.
course.
Right? Where theater gives us the mind and the heart. And so, but all of them are vulnerable. That's it in a nutshell for both the actor and for the audience. A method actor, somebody that chooses to put themselves through a high level of torture of making acting about dealing with their own emotional problems, say not eating, not sleeping, having to go on high medications to deal with a character, or better yet, using your own personal past of, say, abuse, for example, to seep onto the screen, where your tears aren't planned and trained tears, they're real tears.
Yeah.
There's a difference between watching somebody invoke empathy and somebody that is actually going through it.
Yeah.
Right? And that is the difference. Method acting, in my opinion, can be controlled and can be used as a tool when you're using it as a tool. But when it is the foundation of the home that you are building, then it becomes a problem.
Mm-hmm.
It can be my hammer, but it cannot be my foundation.
Partially, I assume the reason for that, I think Dot will appreciate the new picture that I just put up. Part of the reason for that, I think, is that, well, there's two things. One, because if you're being destructive to yourself, first of all, I have never ever believed in the nonsense that one needs to be a martyr for their own art. That's a bunch of bullshit.
We don't ask athletes to go out and be a martyr for themselves, to break their bodies and to take steroids.
You know what, Dot? We do that actually, and we do it way too much. If you listen to people who talk about football quarterbacks and are kind of like, I don't know why that guy, like Andrew Luck retired at the beginning of last NFL season because he was tired of his body breaking down. They're like, he's still 29 and he could have done this, that, and the other. I'm like, and he wants to live till he's beyond 49.
40,
like,
yeah, because he may have a family. It's the same thing with method actors. It's like, why do we praise these method actors that put their bodies and their minds through all of this emotional trauma?
Exactly.
To do their art, to make their thing.
Yeah. And would it have been better, would we have been better off having a situation like Jimi Hendrix, right? A guy who, blew himself out by the age before he hit 30, or Kurt Cobain, or numerous examples of musicians who did the same kind of thing and either couldn't hang in there and sadly
because there was an expectation of what they had to do.
Exactly.
To be who they were.
That's it. And so as a result, we burned them out. Like, the society burned them out. And, would we have rather have had that? Or we would rather have had someone like, to use a similar example, Eric Clapton, who is still alive and somehow managed to avoid this stuff and produced great work well past the point where he would have exited based upon the Kurt Cobain and Jimi Hendrix model, right? And so as a result, think about the work that Hendrix would have been doing in his 50s. Think about the 30 years of the 3 decades of genius that we missed as a result.
Or Janis.
Cobain. Or, yeah. I mean, like any
Heath
of these.
Ledger.
Sure. All of these are examples of people that burned themselves out one way or the other. River Phoenix.
River Phoenix. Oh, is it better to burn out than to fade away?
And see, a lot of them say like, oh, it's better to burn out. And the answer is, well, no, actually, not if you find a way to burn at a sustainable level, Right. So
it's not about burning out. It's just about burning.
So we're not, so you're right. Yeah. So you're right. We're not talking about sort of one sacrificing themselves for their art. So then I guess my question would be, so if you're in the process of putting together a scene, let's say, because you're right, we can't plan for these things. However, if you're going into a particular environment, you may say, as I just mentioned now, it's more likely you're going to run into scenarios that could be very intense. Do you have, as you're writing or preparing, do you have things that you're like, I'm not even going to put this particular encounter or whatever there because it's like 60-40, it's going to go the wrong way, or even if it's 50-50, that it's going to go the wrong way. And so I don't know that that's a risk that I want to take. And maybe you'll take other risks or whatever, but do you do any of that, or do you rely entirely on the safety tools at the time as opposed to pre-planning?
Safety tools are the foundation, right? But yeah, I mean, even in writing, like I avoid bringing a lot of NPC children into my campaigns
Okay.
because I have a huge problem with children dying, and
Oh God.
a huge problem with children dying. Well, we went into Strahd knowing I went into Strahd
gonna say,
knowing what
you
I
knew
was
what you
up
were
for.
getting
Okay, I was prepared for that. But I mean, like as a GM,
No,
I
I'm
don't
with you.
want
I'd
it to
feel the
take a
same way.
turn where a child has to be kidnapped
Same.
or sacrificed.
Same.
Right? I have an even softer spot for animal cruelty on a high level. If you knew how many times it took me to watch John Wick, you'd laugh in my face, because every time I started that movie, I was an emotional disaster.
Yeah.
20 minutes in.
Oh yeah.
For good reason, without spoilers, right? So like I struggle with animal cruelty. So anytime a player brings a familiar to the table or a mount to the table that has import to them, we talk about where is the line. Does your creature come to combat? If so, they can die.
Yep.
Are you and I prepared for that?
Yep.
Right? Yeah. So, or if I go into a campaign where I have a player that, say, struggles with the death of family members. I've had this happen before. She lost both of her parents at a young age, 15, one after the other. She struggles with parents' deaths.
Of course.
So then I believe it is my job to look at the situation and go, well, what was I trying to evoke with, say, a planned scene where a parent died? Can I achieve that in a different way? Right? Acting is all about tactics because we're trying to do something.
Right.
Acting is about action,
Right.
And taking action. So if I'm a GM and I'm putting myself in that position, and what I'm trying to do is put my players in position to take action or to have a reaction to something.
Right.
What was the death of the parents trying to do? If it was simply trying to evoke emotion, how else can I do that? Do I have to kill parents? No. There are tons of ways of doing that.
Yeah, this is really well said. Let me just jump in for 1 second. This is really well said, and this is important, by the way, in writing also, because you sometimes hear this when people have heard the term fridging, which is basically a term that gets used as to the way to give a male character motivation is by killing off his significant other, which has all kinds of problems associated, first of all, with completely devaluing the significant other. Like she just becomes a motivation for something else. And secondly, creates this environment where literally, whether or not it's because he loved this person and she's gone, or he's torturing this person and she's alive, either way, it is harming a woman for the benefit of a man again, right? Like, and it even if it's for the benefit of his arc, and it's lazy writing. You don't need to rely upon rape to get across we live in a dark, depraved time
of our body.
Such nonsense.
And,
yes.
Yeah.
Such nonsense. We live in a dark, depraved time. Yes, you can show dark depravity without showing rape. You just don't have to do that. It's lazy. And so, anyway, I'm sorry. Go on. But that's
really it. Is I think as I plan, and if I'm looking at these things, and I know that there is possibly going to be a trigger, the long and short of it is, how can I do better, right? In any kind of writing and any kind of creativity, when you hit a speed bump, like, say, I don't know, the coronavirus, when you're a theater, what do? You overcome and you move past it, and you try to see past what is directly in front of you.
Right.
So if the plan was kill parents, how do I look past that? Do the parents have to be killed? Can they be kidnapped?
Yep.
Saved? Invoking the same kind of loss of control of their lives. There's so many other things. Does it even need to involve parents?
Right.
Why is family the only choice? What if one of the parties kidnapped? Are they the family?
Right. That's right. So that's exactly right. It's you have carte blanche to be able to make adjustments based upon what is sort of right for your players.
And you as the GM.
Say again.
And you as the GM,
right?
Not
Of course,
just your players. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so yeah. And I should say that the notion of making sure that you're clear about what your party can manage is, we've talked many times on this show about the importance of a good session zero, but I think it's also important this is another reason why communication with your players is so important. And part of that is to understand, where they're at and how they sort of tick, so that you get to, like, for example, the Curse of Strahd stuff that we were doing. The players, when we started, were not dealing with the intensity of stuff that we started dealing into the middle of the campaign. Even when I brought Dot in, and Dot came in about halfway, roughly speaking, into the campaign, even there, Dot was dealing, the stuff that we brought Dot's character in, they were dealing with some stuff that became kind of body horror image-ish, which was, dealing with the Abbey and all that stuff up there. But there was stuff that was not going to be incredibly intensive, as far as the harm to animals or anything like that, for considerably further along, right, in the campaign than when they joined. So it gave us gave me a chance as a GM, as a DM, to kind of understand where the players were at. So I'll tell you where this is particularly important. These safety tools are probably useful everywhere, and I must admit that I should start using safety tools more than I do for the regular campaigns, but I now am starting to implement them in my sort of pickup ones, right, with pickup groups. I would not ever DM anymore at a convention as a pickup group without using some kind of safety tool, because I don't have time, because I've just met these people usually, to be able to get to know them, to know what's going to hurt them, what won't hurt them, etc. Like that, it's extremely valuable for that. And I think communication as much as you can is important, and the safety tools are super valuable all the time, but super valuable as well when you don't have the time, because you haven't run into these people before, to be able to know what's going to work with your players, what could potentially be dangerous, and so on. Also, thank you, Jay Rab, for the resub. 27 months, you are my hero. You are the wind beneath my wings. Thanks, Jay. So that becomes extremely important for something along those lines. Do you, as someone, I mean, I do my, community D&D stuff, or D&D with viewers that I do every other month. Do you, because when you're doing the Sunday Funday stuff quite a bit, did you always feel like you had a good grasp of the people that were asking to play in your sessions, or did you have things where a lot of people were utterly brand new? And did that ever create a situation where you would avoid certain topics or adventures because you just had no idea what you were going to get in one of those things?
That is the fear of community gaming, because part of the community that I try to build is that everybody is welcome. Mm-hmm. But there are rules that we use. And so in my Sunday Fun Days, when people sign up, the first thing I do is contact them obviously in advance and set them up for the game and lay down expectation. Okay. I let them know this is a community game. This is not about your character. This will not continue. This is a one shot.
Right.
Unless it is a grinder, I don't usually kill characters in a one shot unless that's what everybody wants.
Oh, you all heard it. Next time you're playing, if you do whatever you want, she won't kill you.
I usually don't kill them. I may make it difficult on them, but I don't kill them. Now, if we were playing the new Aliens RPG, that'd be a hell of a lot different.
Oh, Jesus.
The only thing left standing will be the alien. That's dependent. But yeah, there is always this fear of like, who's popping in? Do they have it? But part of Sunday Fun Day is learning to have fun together while learning.
Okay.
Right. So that's also part of it, is like, you don't have to know how to play a game to have fun. Part of it is about, most of Sunday Fun Day is about community. Okay. Fun is built around a game, yes, but fun is also built when we come together, meet new people, laugh with new people, okay, be vulnerable with each other, which is difficult for some people. And the safety of the internet has allowed so many introverts to have friends. Right. And so it's hard for me to say, no, you're not welcome until you break the rules. So I always have safety tools. That's one of the things that they get. I always lay down individual one-shot guidelines. Like, this is what this game is about. This is when it's set. Here's the details. Build your character. Okay. And I'm brave enough now to kind of be like, I don't even look over their characters. I expect them to bring something to the table unless they're new and need help. That's a whole separate story. Right. But yeah, part of it's laying out expectation for community gaming. And there is always a fear we could get somebody. I heard of a horror story on a channel where somebody was very new to this. They never used Roll20. They've never done the streaming thing before. A lot of what we consider baseline standard, you can't expect people to come in with that. You can't expect them to come in and know how to use Roll20. You cannot expect them to come in with knowledge of RPGs outside of D&D. You can't even expect them to come in with knowledge of D&D. Mm-hmm. Of the slang that we use, D20, crit success, these kinds of things isolate people. Yeah. So you have to learn to communicate with people in a way that everybody can understand. So this channel had invited somebody new, which was what they were all about. And live on the show, they were going around introducing themselves and their characters and their pronouns. Okay. Which is standard on the internet now. We understand that why we use pronouns. Right. This person did not. And so they genuinely asked live, because everybody was femme associated, okay, and looked femme. Okay. So there was no, everybody was playing female characters too. So everybody was she, her. So they didn't understand, like, if if somebody that was female identifying was playing a male character, they would use he, him, but that wasn't the case. So it wasn't really landing in terms of its purpose
Okay.
at the time
Okay.
for somebody new to it. And they asked about it on stream, and the channel, this moderator for this channel, immediately blocked them, cut the stream, blocked them from the channel, and kicked them off the show, and then came back live with that person gone.
Whoa.
I saw it with my own eyes.
Eee.
And my question
did they comment on that?
No. No, it was never addressed. This person was like, I don't understand the use of these pronouns. Can somebody explain it to me in so many words?
And they got him. Wow.
So instead of recognizing that not everybody comes to the table as you, I've gotten off on like a whole tangent. This is why you can't let me talk, Arv. But
No,
I think that it's helpful. Like I explain pronouns and those kind of things. So when you open up for community gaming, you open up to the idea that not everybody can come to the table the way you want them to.
Yeah.
That's hard. That's the hard part
Yeah.
of recognizing your place in all of this and teaching people and trying to invite people into a community. So Sunday Fun Days were an experiment, and they worked for me. I have never in the history of a Sunday Fun Day, and of course I got one this weekend, so I'm going to knock right now on some wood, that I've never had a troll or somebody pop up and really derail things. Occasionally we get the bad internet signal. Occasionally we get somebody that does a 20-minute character intro. But part of my job too is helping them recognize their place at a table with another group of people.
Right.
So as a facilitator, it's my place to say thank you so much for such an interesting character backstory. I hope we get to some of it.
Yeah.
I promise that? No. Am I going to promise that? Absolutely not. Am I going to shame them for being excited about a character live and taking up 20 minutes of our game? Absolutely not.
Yeah, that's yeah, because again, and it really, what you're describing, that's pretty, that story is quite something, is really a kind of gatekeeping, which is in a way, which is to me deeply problematic, because you talked about the idea of learning, and here you had an opportunity for teaching
your audience,
right.
Because you didn't know who else in your audience didn't know that information.
Yeah.
That person was vulnerable and brave enough to ask that question that I don't understand. It's like a teacher shutting down a question in a classroom.
Yep.
Well, that was a stupid question. You should know. That's not how you teach children.
And what did you do to them? Have you made it so that they're going to go, oh, well, I guess in the future, no, they're going to be like,
now I'm
well,
not
F these freaking, I'm not going to, what
right?
did you do? And, so you could say, well, I don't care about that person. But as you said, the thing that streamers, especially people streaming tabletop stuff, need to remember is that, I shouldn't say that, anyone streaming anything live, we have no idea what the lurkers, the people who never say anything, are thinking about what we're doing, and they notice what we're doing. And so
yes.
if you allow bigotry and racism to go on unchecked, then they're going to know that apparently that's okay with you. And if you shut someone down because they're trying to ask a question and you're missing a teachable moment so that you can make some make some statement and
right.
Then wave a flag about how great you were. If that's what you're going to do, then they also see that. And so that's really important to be able to think about the impact you have elsewhere. So I think the point here that we're trying to make is about the sort of emotional side of DMing and GMing and how to navigate
the responsibility.
And the responsibility that we have to navigate it. That's right. And here's the overall point that I would like to finish this little part of this topic on is we have a responsibility. We also have a responsibility to try. Because the alternative to this is to basically say, I am never going to allow deeply emotional play, and I'm always going to make a joke, and I'm always going to undercut. And you and I have both been in environments where that would be easy to do, where someone would be trying to make something.
I got a joke at the end of every line if I needed it.
Exactly.
It was my shield growing up. I used comedy to bypass being a real person.
Wow. Dang.
Right? So like we hide behind jokes, right? We hide behind jokes most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And as a result, that's powerful. And as a result, you undercut the chance for real movement and understanding. And again, don't misunderstand. This is not about saying that comedy is enormously valuable to get us in contact with our feelings. Mm-hmm. But the point is there is a time and a place for all these emotions, and undercutting moments of real grief that could be healing because you're just like, nope. That creates an environment where people begin to place those emotions lower on the totem pole. They think of them as being somehow shameful, that they are somehow negatives, that they are somehow wrong to be publicly shared. And we are so, as a society, deeply affected by our inability to be emotionally real with each other and emotionally vulnerable, that I think we need to model that in our game sessions also. And so that's very powerful, and I think that's important to look at how emotional vulnerability can be used, and to be willing to try and to learn, and to do so with care and compassion, and to think about the right times to do it. And, again, I'm not prescribing that you run out and start bearing your heart on every stream that you do, or play in, but I am asking you to consider the possibility of pushing the envelope a little bit, of opening up even further communication with your players, and being willing to be a little bit, challenge yourself, I guess, and challenge your players emotionally, and be willing to be emotionally vulnerable with them and your players and your audience, because all of that together ultimately creates an environment, I think, where we're playing games that matter more. And that's powerful, and can do a lot. So you admit to being a lurker most. Well, listen, Echo. Well, I mean, listen, every streamer knows this. The overwhelming majority of people that you're going to see are lurkers. Like, most people on Twitch channels are lurkers. The percentage of people that chat is always less than the number of people that are actually sitting in chat. And, everybody loves having a nice, vibrant, chat that moves along. But no matter how big the chat is, there's always going to be a little bit of, there's going to be a significant portion, of lurkers that underpin that channel. And that's completely fine. That's the sort of lifeblood of the channel, are the lurkers, many people say. So that's totally fine. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit then about anything we want to chat up in terms of things that we have recently gotten on the role-playing or board gaming or anything like that front. Stuff that we've gotten that we've bought or checked out or looked at or examined, or
Oh, Lord.
any such thing.
I've not bought as much recently. I know that sounds bad, doesn't it? Well,
yes. How dare you not buy
bad.
things?
How dare you not spend your money on more books you can't get to? I don't know that this qualifies for this topic, but I'm going to bring it up.
Okay.
Please tell me you have seen all of the announcements about the new Dune RPG.
I've seen not all of them. I've seen some of them.
Did you? I'm guessing you probably saw the one that Polygon released.
Yes, I saw that one.
Yeah, that's
yes.
the one. Okay.
Yes.
That is all I am waiting for.
That's your jam, right?
That and the end of coronavirus. like they're on similar levels.
Does it have to be in order? Like first coronavirus ends, then Dune? Is that how that works?
It's like I am. We'll have when
Dune
it happens. We will have a very special show where Dot goes stupidly nuts on Masters of the Dungeon over the Dune RPG. Dune. May the spice.
Yeah, not Doom.
Fear is the mind killer.
Fear is the mind killer. I want to make sure. Are you going to on stream when Dune comes out? Will you use the agony box or whatever the hell they call that thing? Will you attempt to role play the experience of putting your fingers into a box and watching them get crushed?
Are you playing a Bene Gesserit? Is what I was born for.
Are we going to get a recirculation suit?
Do you know that it's not even? I decided
the rehydration suit. Are you going to cosplay a rehydration suit?
I'm telling you guys, this is about all of this new Dune stuff is about to blow open in the Dot world. Like, I'm so excited. So you should know that the Bene Gesserits are not even a build, which is how I decided that I'm gonna have to be a GM. Because I can't play a Bene Gesserit as a player. I can only GM a Bene Gesserit. So just know it's a coming. Oh no, here he goes.
Jessica heard the disturbance in the great hall, turned on the light beside her bed. The clock there had not been properly adjusted to local time, and she had to subtract 21 minutes to determine that it was about 2 a.m. The disturbance was loud and incoherent. Is this the Harkonnen attack? She wondered. She slipped out of bed, checked the screen monitors to see where her family was. The screen showed Paul asleep in the deep cellar room they'd hastily converted to a bedroom for him. This from the chapter, the saying of which, there is no escape, we pay for the violence of our ancestors, from the collected sayings of Muad'Dib by the Princess Irulan. I give to you Dune. There you go.
Read it.
Right
you
there.
haven't read it, that book. I remember Okay, speaking of people making fun
It's
of
dense as hell, though. Oh my God, is it dense?
it is Frank Herbert.
Yeah.
So if you don't like that kind of thing, I get it. But like, okay, so I remember reading Dune. I was in the 8th grade the first time that I like read it and think I really got it. And I remember we had to do these stupid book reports. And this was the moment that they were starting to really try to integrate arts into schools. This was like a huge movement in 2000.
Okay.
Well, it was in 8th grade. So it would have been end of the 90s, beginning of 2000s. And so we had to do this book report. And we had to draw a brochure, like pitching this book
Okay.
to the class. And my class chose the Yuge. And I get up there. I have hand drawn this fucking brochure. Like I've hand drawn it and then run it back through a printer, which is high tech for the late 90s, early 2000s. Like I hand drew it and then ran it back through a printer.
Dang.
I had laid out this brochure on a Word document. Like I was so excited about this. And I got up and made this book report in front of my class about Dune. They made fun of me for weeks afterwards.
Really? Why?
Weeks afterwards. Because they thought I was weird. I'm sure I dotted out on them. I dotted in front of all of them. I got like, I was like, there are these worms and sand and spice and their eyes are blue and they drink this underground water and she has this crazy trip. Like, I'm sure that I was far too much for everybody in the 8th grade, but they made fun of me so much. They called me a sandworm for weeks in the hallways. I was made fun of so much for it. And my friends have never completely let me live it down because of my level of excitement for that book. So you should know 8th grade Dot over the last years has only grown in excitement. And then Modiphius announced like 8 months ago that they were making an RPG. And now Dot and 8th grade Dot just merged to become Super Saiyan Dot. And Super Saiyan Dot is so excited about a Dune RPG. So that is the only thing I'm saving my money for right now. That's my new pitch. Go sign up for the newsletters and everybody get freaking hyped because I am hyped.
Everybody get pumped up for Dune. That's hilarious. I was, that's funny. Yeah, I mean, it's weird to think of the idea that Dune, I mean, there hasn't been a more recent version of a role play for Dune. Like, you would think that would have, I mean, it's like tailor made for this environment. You would think that people be all over it, but it just hasn't been. I mean, like,
I think it's interesting because like, and this is me hypothesizing. This is not actual any hard data or statistics or numbers that I can tell you, but I can say that like, the interest in RPGs has begun to grow in the younger audience. But a lot of the older books that we have read, like Dune and Lord of the Rings and things, are not part of their vernacular.
mm-hmm.
The younger audiences are buying things like Kids on Bikes, which has a general skin that you can put whatever you want on top of it,
mm-hmm.
right? Yeah. So it's just one of those things where like, we're seeing the actual interest in RPGs grows, but these very specific ones aren't landing with the same audiences that's growing into it. So my bigger fear is things that are really specific, like the Aliens RPG, are going to have a older audience, even though we're growing in a new younger audience that doesn't speak our vernacular because they didn't grow up in a decade or decades where that was a shared concept of like entertainment and books and things.
This is a good point. It's a little bit of a concern that I have with some of the big kind of 80s push with, as you say, Kids on Bikes, with Tales from the Loop, with there's a lot of this. There is a worry, and I think actually the kind of apex of this for me is Ready Player One, which is a book that I don't particularly care for.
See, and I've got it tattooed on my body. I got the 3 keys hanging on the wall. They're right there.
Here's why, though. Here's the thing. So, but see, that's weird though, because I mean, not you're weird. You're of course not weird at all. What I meant was what's funny about it to me is that I grew up in this era. I mean, I grew up in the 80s, and so what Ready Player One feels to me a lot of is just how many references can you cram into a book? And I'm like, yeah, okay, Duran Duran, yes, Krull, haha, Die Hard. Like I lived through that once. So why exactly do I want to just have the experience doing
it again?
Yeah,
See,
well, no, not quite. Let me rephrase that. yes, I want to. I understand why you'd want to live in that environment. This is why I found Tales from the Loop incredibly powerful, as I've talked about on here, because Tales from the Loop reflected my experience, and I didn't realize it until I started thinking that the reason that Tales from the Loop works so well, and the reason that it was so weird, is that we lived in the '80s on the hair trigger of Armageddon.
Yes.
That we were literally close to being annihilated in World War III on a regular basis, and that created this bizarre strangeness about the time period. And it's the only way I can describe it. Go watch, music videos with Cyndi Lauper, and go watch Red Dawn, and go watch Krull, and go watch, War Games, and go watch. These are weird. They're good, but they're the Goonies. These are strange things, right? Even Stand By Me, which is wonderfully done, is strange. These are strange things, and that's because the society at the time was strange. So I'm happy to play within that because I think it picked up something so powerful. The problem I have with Ready Player One is I feel like it's someone who opened a dictionary or opened an encyclopedia, and they're like, oh, let me make the following 45 references, and then you also made those 45 references, right? And I'm like, yeah, but this doesn't tell me why we all did smelly stickers when we were in 5th grade during the 80s, or why people went out and got freaking Care Bears, or what the hell Garbage Pail Kids were, or what,
see,
why,
it's interesting. My view of it is different because I don't think it's about your generation. It's about Ready Player One is about a generation that has been taken over by technology. That book is a love story.
You don't think it's about the 80s? It
No,
feels very much to me like an 80s.
It was pitched to the general public as a nostalgic love story to the 80s, and it is to some degree, but it's not about the 80s.
Huh. Okay.
It's about two people who met in a virtual reality coming together to find real love. In a decade and an era where we don't have that anymore, where people work off their debt and live in cubby holes. It's about the future and a person that is trying to escape the future by living in the past.
Huh. Well,
And
that's a very
think about it.
compelling argument.
The end of the book is one of those moments as a reader that I literally read it, cried, and then started a book over because I was so impressed by the emotional impact it had on me of him choosing that, the virtual reality that he had dumped his time, his energy, trying to live in a period and a place where he wasn't, trying to live up to his mentor, which was somebody that wasn't even around anymore, who inevitably taught him that people and love are more important.
Right.
That is where real happens, right? That unplugging from the world that you're currently in, like our world where we're always plugged in.
Yeah.
And going back to a time where we were connecting more, where we were so scared that we were hiding behind great music and art and new ideas and video games. The 80s is a representation, a separate representation, a parallel one for that book. I think Ready, like I said, I got the 3 keys literally tattooed on my body and they're currently hanging on my wall. The movie doesn't exist. It's not even a thing. It was never produced in the dot world. Very rarely have I ever got up to walk out of a movie.
So that was
Ready Player One. That was
just bad, huh? So is that would you call that the M. Night Shyamalan, or no? The last Airbender of films for you is what that was like. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, it was. Spielberg got his hands on it, and he couldn't get the rights to all the references that the book did.
Okay.
So he plugged all his own stuff in, which is fine because he's a large part of the 80s. Let's be real.
Yeah, that's true.
But it was not the movie. They changed. So they kept 20% of the book in the movie. The rest of it did not happen in the book. It's like the main character is almost cut from one of his most important moments is cut entirely and given to another character. The ending of the book, the most important thing to me, these two characters meeting in person for the first time ever in person, like skin to skin touching, kissing, right? Happens in the first hour of the movie. They meet in person. It destroys the entire story. There's a rant out there somewhere on my Facebook when I went to see this film and I came home. You can go read it, but the movie does not exist. I argue with people all the time. I think that book is incredible. I read it once every year to 2 years. It's still, and yes, it's full of references and nostalgia bullshit. And for those that actually live through it, maybe isn't as impactful as, say, some YouTube star reading it now who didn't know any of that, doesn't even know what the hell dial-up is. Okay, so I get it, but I think for me, it's the 80s references are simply a parallel to what he's trying to deal with in this world.
Okay.
at the moment.
That's interesting. I mean, maybe then there may be something fair about that. There's if I imagine it as sort of a fundamental love story, I don't know that I'm totally convinced, for me anyway, that the love story overrides the kind of shotgun or even fire hose of just how many references can you fit in, because at a certain point it felt very manipulative to me. Like I was kind of like, right, one of the things that I loved about Tales from the Loop is that Tales from the Loop doesn't overwhelm you with reference. It's just when it gets a reference, the reference fits perfectly into the strangeness of the time. I guess I think Tales from the Loop is saying something important. I didn't think Ready Player One was saying anything important about the 80s. It was just saying, hey, what about the 80s? And to me, the 80s was not just, we all sat at home and had crazy hair and watched Duran Duran videos. Like there was a lot more going on. But what you just described, if that's true, and if that's not just an extremely intelligent reframe of Ready Player One,
Me manipulating you live on screen.
Maybe you're selling yourself short. Maybe you did a brilliant job, Dot, of basically Ready Player Dot, like the actual the
I'm
Dot
serious.
version.
They should have let me sell that book for them, because
man, like just
much.
good stuff. But I will take that into account.
I think the remembrance is like, and this is also to be true. I read a really interesting forum that said, it feels like it's overloaded with 80s references because his character is overloaded with 80s references. He's hiding from his world inside of 80s references. And the internet, which is only references. Like, we can never live the 80s again, no matter how hard you try. And in this case, it's him trying to recreate it. So he's trying to just grab the references.
Right.
Yeah, the big things that we know.
Right, that's fair. And oh man, I can imagine so many interesting conversations about that book. But
oh my God,
we will not.
We can have a whole stream about Ready Player One. We'll do that later.
Yeah, exactly. We'll do that another time. All right. So Dune. Okay. So Dune. Go get Dune. All right. Well, since we talked about
that's how we got off on that tangent.
This is going to be this thing. All right. So I hadn't showed this before. I am going to show again. I was going to make a reference to Free League and the fact that they made an announcement that they are going to be doing they are taking over basically the One Ring and apparently the 5e Middle Earth thing, which is great. And I have reached out to them, and I want to reach out to them again and be like, I know we're in the middle of a pandemic, but when we clear the other side of it, if you would be interested in sponsoring me the way that the previous campaign was sponsored, I have some really, really freaking good players that are playing a Tolkien campaign right now that were previously there. So, but what I will do for the moment is I will talk about this because this fits perfectly. And I'd like you all to cast your eyes upon the Choose Your Own Adventure game, War with the Evil Power Master, which is based upon, of course, the books by R.A. Montgomery, among them, if you remember the Choose Your Own Adventure as a kid. Now, I had a couple Choose Your Own Adventure, like every, good red-blooded kid of a certain age who grew up during that time period. But most of what I did was, of course, the fighting fantasy books, and we've played a bunch of those in my stream and the Sorcery series and whatever. But the cool thing about this is that the Choose Your Own Adventure were always quirky and a little strange. And this particular one is done by Z-Man Games, which has been a good board game company for a long time, and card games. And what this basically is a cooperative adventure game where you make decisions and choices with the people in your group to try to basically discover and then challenge the evil Power Master for control of the universe. And it's over the top and it's silly and it's ridiculous and whatever. It's very Mars Attacks, Z-Bot type of thing, right? But the thing that's cool about this is that there are two gauges on either side. In fact, maybe I can show that on the board. There are two gauges on either side of the board. And on this side, you have the evil Power Master meter. And then on this side, you have got the signal tracker. And as you do various adventures by visiting various planets and combining the skills of your players.
How cute it is.
You have that. Yeah, it really is a really cool, cute looking cards too are really neat. So you build your signal as you're looking for him. And while he is trying to simultaneously do stuff, this tracker is going up as well. If he gets here before you and your party get there, then he wins. He takes over and wins the universe. But if you go this direction and get there first, then you get to challenge him. And there are multiple different endings. It's also fairly replayable, and you can even get various equipment. Like, for example, a Hamog Karma Inducer. Okay, so a Hamog Karma Inducer is a device created on the planet Hamog that hastens karmic retribution in any situation. So if you lose a challenge, basically it means that you can use this thing to reduce the penalty that you would pay for it. So it increases karmic retribution against the enemy, which is in this case is the evil Power Master. So there's like really, really neat stuff like that. The characters are really well written and really funny. You have, for example, let's see, the evil Power Master, occupation, agitator, mastermind, jerk. He was born on the planet Destardo. Major figure in the Purple Days War, where he was thought to have been killed. Failed stand-up comedian. Has since rallied non-Lacunian system planets into successful rebellion. Strength, solid minion organizer. Stylish, confident, has clear goals. Weaknesses, always yelling, works too hard, wants to destroy civilization, and then evil is asterisked in at the very end. So there's a lot of really cool little bits like that. This is a silly game, but my daughter and I had a blast playing this. And I think if you're looking for something which is more replayable than you might think, it's a game that you can play in like a half hour.
Okay.
And they got a very small footprint, like, pretty much this board and then like a little bit, just the cards kind of around it. So it's pretty good. And I got this, my good friend, our good friend actually, Russ Guberman, when he was visiting here, actually got me this as a Christmas gift. And it was awesome. So yeah, War with the Evil Power Master. And again, I bring it up because 80s, this is the stuff that was happening. Where can you purchase about 1 million of those and shipped into 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue? Oh my God, 1 million of these? Oh my God. He's not smart enough to get it, man. It'll be wasted on him. Okay. Oh, karma inducers. Oh, God, yeah. Yes, please. Can we hasten the karma inducers? I tell you what, maybe when he learns how to make 1 million masks, we can work on 1 million karma inducers. That moron. Anyway, before I get myself frustrated with that, I will move on to say that now is the time where we talk about questions. So if I saw a couple of people had questions before for us while we were chatting, so now's the time to do it. Just type in all capitals, question, colon, and then the question that you would like Dot and myself to answer in terms of a game mastering concern that might have value. I know that Genly had one of those. I think that I saw before.
There were two. I think I saw from Genly. One. How do you avoid a player dominating the game?
Okay.
Or to give chance for a new or introvert person at their time. That was asked like way back, and then the new one down here about criticism.
Okay. Well, let's do the. Let me back.
That was
up.
Way back. I had to scroll a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. How do you avoid a player dominating the game or give a chance for a new or introvert person to have their time? Okay. Well, you explain that dominance is the only answer. No, you don't do that.
Yeah. You crack that whip, Gimli.
Yeah, exactly. You say you will dominate. This is your game. No one else takes your character. This is your game.
No, I think it's bound to happen. You're going to have introverts and extroverts at your table all the time. Let's be real. Have learned that I'm a dominating player. Surprise. If you have a player that's unaware that they're a dominating player and seem to be really running the table, as I call it, like running away with the table, it's your job as a GM to facilitate, right? When kids are fighting on a playground or one kid is bullying another kid, does the teacher just let it happen? And I know that's like an extreme version, but the teacher steps in.
They did in the 80s. I'm sorry.
They did in the 80s. Here, you take, we'll do the Donald Trump rate. You get a stick and you get a stick and start beating one another. But I think it's, you step in to facilitate. And part of that facilitation is building your encounters now to not be about the dominant player.
Yeah.
Usually what happens is the dominant player is going to attach themselves to something and they're going to drive the story, trying to make it about them, about what they can do. Whether that's from wizard to fighter to rogue, whatever they're playing, they're going to try to make it about them. And it's your job to turn the wheel back to the main road and get the other three more invested in the story so that they don't feel like they have to drive the train. Which is what the dominant player usually feels like, and they're unaware of it. So one way is to not make it about them. So if I've got a fighter character and they're dominant, we're not going into combat for a couple sessions.
Yeah, because you don't want to foreground the strengths of someone who will try to be foregrounded anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Dot's right on that. I think the other thing to do is to make sure that you are, drawing out the other players, not by putting the spotlight directly on them, which they may not be comfortable with necessarily immediately, especially, but by creating situations that is more likely to play to the strengths of that given person. So that's partly
Right.
what Dot just said, but I think, positively providing this to other players. So one of the things I'm always conscious of is making sure that there are encounters and NPCs that are going to interact powerfully with a given character. So one of the things that is kind of happened somewhat organically is that Dot's character of Agatha has this connection with Casimir, this NPC, because they're both Dusk Elves, because there is this sense of there's a kind of shared history there and a shared heritage. And so there's a connection that exists there. There have been many times, Tren's character of Weller, people who have been watching that will know there was, Weller had a thing about werewolves and what they did to friends of his. And so there was a whole sequence we had probably a few months ago now where they were in a cave dealing with these werewolves, and he set up this water thing that basically we called it like this laundromat of death, where he just put them in this washer of water and just bashed them against the wall repeatedly. And like, that was his moment. And there was a lot of what Weller did. He's like, well, I'm sitting there staring, watching it. And the rest of the players, to their credit, were all like, we kind of walk past him, pat him on the shoulder, walk on by, sit there with him, watch with him, because they knew how important something like this was.
Right. And I'll say too, if you really feel like a player is dominating a table, or they dominate an entire session, don't make the next session about them. Do a flashback episode.
Right, exactly.
About another player. Or if you feel like you need to have a chat with them, don't come at it from a place of like, I need you to do this differently.
Yeah. You are failing. Like
you are failing. Like you're messing this table up. Yeah. That is not the way to approach it. Usually if I have a very dominant player, I'm going to tell them that. I'm going to say, hey, you are doing great at the table. We're getting great character from you. You're giving me this, you're giving me this, and you're really excelling. I need you to help me include everybody else.
Yep.
That is helping them take what they're usually your dominant players want responsibility at the table. They want to feel like they are involved. And so they're diving as hard and fast as they can for it. Right. So give them something to do. Be like, hey, they're taking a massive step back. Can we shift focus? How can you help me bring them back into the story?
Yes. And that also is something which can be helpful in a classroom. It's a similar thing which you see in a classroom when you're dealing with a particular student that tends to dominate conversation, figuring out a way to get them where other people are engaging in discussion so that, like having them piggyback off of, you said something the other day, the dominant student might say to a non-dominant student, you said this the other day that I thought was really interesting about this, this, and this. And you're encouraging, them to take their energy, because usually a lot of it comes from energy,
it's
like
energy.
This desperate desire to want to share and to do, and you're investing it, basically.
Yeah, exactly. You're investing it. Before that, it's just like, here I am, notice me. And if you can bring that in and say, keep all that energy and we're going to funnel it to do something, then that's where magic starts to happen.
I agree. And I would also encourage, because I've done a number of these that have worked very well, to do certain little solo or 2-player sessions. I did one with Weller and Alec, for example. I've done other solo sessions with Brood when Don Cairo was playing with us.
Sessions.
Those solo sessions are great because not only do you get a chance to really focus on one player, but especially if you do that for all of them and they feel like, again, they are sort of on stage for a given moment, that also gives them a chance to figure out aspects of their character which they can then bring back to the group so that a less dominant player will become more invested. And if you do the same thing for the dominant player will not feel as desperate to but I have to show you all this awesome stuff because they just got a big 3-hour session where it was all about them. And so it works for both the dominant and the non-dominant players that can make that happen. I really, Rock God, I just have to say, it really cracked me up. The conversation should be, you're losing D&D.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't treat them don't treat them like a problem at the table, because then what you're doing is stifling their energy.
Yes.
And as you said, you want to help them realize they're not failing you or anyone else, that their presence is still warranted,
right?
But that help them redirect that energy to something that's beneficial for the party in total, because you need those people at a table, because if it was just extroverts or introverts, right, then what? And if it was just extroverts, then what? Balance
absolutely
is more than just character development.
Absolutely. And the other thing you need to be careful about too is that if you're not careful, you can also tend to rely on those players as a crutch, and all of a sudden you're just like, let me throw this opportunity for RP and this opportunity and this opportunity. And then it just becomes the so-and-so show with everyone else's kind of supporting cast, and that's not really what you want. You want all of them to be able to have their moments. So that sort of thing is important. Yeah, exactly. Give the players not playing some ideas for how they can do their own solo side treks. Exactly. How to get those players invested, because oftentimes they may have an idea for what their character is, but they don't know how to kind of add themselves into the narrative, and then you can do that. And over time, there becomes a rhythm to these things, I think. And it's not always going to be perfect either. Sometimes you do focus a little more on one player than you might have intended in one character, and you just have to be aware of that and try to correct for next time. That's actually one of the benefits of streaming, is that sometimes you get a chance to kind of watch or listen afterwards to some of your stuff on occasion, and that's sometimes I'll be like, oh yeah, I probably did too much there or not enough there, and so that can also be helpful as well, kind of giving yourself feedback also. Okay, so that was the dominant player. We had one other one. Let's see.
Was that one about
criticism? Yeah.
criticism.
How do you handle criticism after you GM'd a game?
I just don't listen to it.
Just like silence.
It's like being an actor. It's like if you read every criticism and took it to heart, you'd stop acting the first show you ever did.
Yep.
I say I don't listen to it. I love hearing the positive stuff. It's great. If you enjoy a campaign, please tell your GMs. If you didn't enjoy a campaign, that's fine. And I can take that criticism with a grain of salt. But not every story is for everyone, right? Like, Arv, you didn't like Ready Player One. Do I hate you because of it? No. Did I take it to heart when I was like, let me tell you why you're wrong? No, I'm just kidding.
Time to explain, Arv.
Time to explain. Let me dot explain to you. So but like it's important to take everything with a grain of salt, because if you're proud of it, don't let somebody else take that from you. Now, if you are not proud of the campaign, or you're struggling with the way the campaign is going, that's totally different, but don't let somebody put that on you. Criticism is still criticism. And it isn't necessarily right or factual.
Well, I would also distinguish as well between feedback and criticism. I think if you're getting feedback that you solicit, especially, and you're getting people who are saying, you know, I liked this, but I wish there had been a little more combat, a little less combat, a little more this, a little less. I think that's absolutely of great value, and you can sort of take that into account as you're kind of figuring out how to go forward. I think what sometimes happens with criticism, and this occasionally occurs in a sort of stream, I don't get it very much, but once in a while, what you'll do is you'll get someone who goes in and they'll be like, you know, and it tends to be the sort of rules lawyers, which are probably my least favorite sort of D&D type, so to speak, which is where the person comes in and they're like, well, you know, but I mean, the truth is actually you only get +2 proficiency when you're doing the following stuff. Listen, I know the rule. I have been playing since first edition. I've been playing since the 80s, of which Dot previously spoke. Okay. I have been playing D&D for a long time. I know a lot of the rules. I am certainly there are certainly times when I am not going to have a particular rule close at hand to mind. There will be times when I make a mistake in representing a rule, but far more important than that, there will be many times when I don't want to apply a rule as written because I think it's worse for my game, and it's my game and my player's adventure. And so I am trying to do something which will be best for the shaping of their fun and their story. The book is not my god, right? And D&D, like Wizards, goes out of its way. How many DM's guides start with something to the effect of, this is your game, you can play how you want to play. There are I can't remember ever having heard anyone official from Wizards be like, listen, if you're not playing this way, you're losing D&D. You know, like, right. I've never heard anyone say that. And yet some people seem to think that that's something they need to throw away and that there's the right way. Absolute nonsense from the word go. I sometimes make adjustments based upon what I think will make for a better experience for all. And I do that on the fly, and I think I'm pretty good at doing it seamlessly, and I think Dot would probably feel the same, and most GMs would feel the same. I do this all the time, and I try to make it seamless. So I don't want, so if people come in and start criticizing because I didn't apply a given rule correctly, those people I ignore entirely. Matt Mercer, God bless the guy, gets more grief about how he solicits, you know, how he evaluates this rule, and he shouldn't have done this thing with the following stuff. And listen, I understand that when you have, you know, 70,000 people, you're going to get some critics, and we should only have those problems. I get it. But at the same time, I am so much more interested in the aggregate experience of what a good DM he is in general, to focus on the fact that he got a rule wrong in like episode 3 of season 12. I mean,
I'll make a prime example. When this Coriolis campaign, in one of the early, we had a lot of viewership very early on, and there's a Coriolis Reddit forum. I stay off of Reddit most entirely, but I made the mistake because of the hype of this show and how much viewership we're getting to go check the Coriolis Reddit site where they got to chatting and they were calling me out on a rule set. And I was devastated. This is just like what started this in January. So this is back in January. Okay. So it's not really been that long. Like this is not some like last timeline dot. Like this is now dot. So like now dot was reading this and I was devastated because like we were telling this incredible story and all they could focus on was the rule call that I made on this one rules thing. And it was my players that were like, but who cares what they think? Did they even watch the entire show? Like we're having a good time. You're having a good time. Our audience that is tuning in live is having a good time. This is just a troll that's on a Reddit site. And so it was actually my players that reminded me that like, I don't need the criticism there. As long as everybody's having a good time and enjoying the game, what difference does it make?
Yep. And that has been the case forever in every edition, except for a small minority of people that think that what matters most is A, regulating the game so that you base everything on how many charts you read, and B, letting you know that you regulated the chart the wrong way. And I would much rather have people who are kind of loose about rules that I can then work with and sort of rein in a bit and be like, okay, and people that are willing to kind of willing to learn, but just don't happen to immediately know the rules. I would much rather have that than the person who can quote chapter and verse of, page 35, section CQ5 of the player's handbook, because those latter people, I don't need them for that, right? Like, and people don't come to the games. The overwhelming majority of people do not come to a game, one of our games, and say, I want to sit down and watch D&D with Infinity and Beyond because I'm going to get an awesome description of armor class proficiency when we get to this section. Like, nobody does that. They come because they want to see the characters interact, because it's a great story, because they get to see exciting combat. And that doesn't mean that I throw the rules out or I don't. Of course I use the rules, but my point is, those are not my God. My God is the experience of the game, the fun for the players, and how it's coming across to the viewers. And separately, am I having fun? Like, those are the things that I care about. I could not care less if I misinterpreted a rule, or, which is usually the case, I interpreted it, but I interpret it the way that I want to interpret it. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, is just much, much like critical hits. Critical hits are not, technically, they have a new critical hit system in 5e where you don't do max damage. That's fine. That's not how I run things. I think it's much more interesting to have it where you do max damage on a crit hit and where you get max damage on a crit hit. I find that much more powerful, and I find that that's something where people are kind of like, it means that crit hits are like, oh my God, you just did this critical hit. That's the way I do it. There's other people that like to play with crit fails where they lose their swords and like something terrible happens to them. I don't play with that because I don't find that as engaging or interesting, and I find that it can often hurt an amazing plan and be disastrous, even though it's completely not the fault of the player that it happened. So I don't play that way. If you want to play that way, fine, play your own game. But I play the game that I think is most fun, moderated over many, many years of experience through many hundreds of players. And that is the most thing that's important. So that's basically it, I would say, Genly, is if it's feedback, that's fine. And especially if it's solicited feedback. If it's criticism of jumping onto a channel and watching for half an hour and then going, hey, you adjudicated the following, combat hit wrong, whatever. Like, great, man. I'm glad that's the thing that matters to you. But that has no interest to me whatsoever. You had a situation where the GM called you out in-game live about knowing the numbers to use. Well, that's stupid on the GM's part. I mean, like, that again... That is insecurity on the GM's part.
Yes, thank you.
If you are repeatedly not ready for your turn and you delay everything because you keep having to look up the same thing over and over and over again, I could see an argument where after a while, you might have to have the DM sit down with you and go, listen, are you understanding everything about the book? Because this is kind of, we need to figure out a way to be a little more efficient with your use of time because it's slowing things down for everyone else. If you don't happen to know the numbers to use in a situation, under no circumstances have I, in any game I've ever run, been like, oh, Jesus, really? Like, I have never done that. And I don't understand why anyone would do it except insecurity, because they're afraid that it's going to break their game because you got something
right
wrong.
Or you're stealing their moment as a GM and interrupting their game, and it's like, well, guess what, it's not your game,
so just ignore
it's
that
our game.
Ignore it. Bullshit, Genly, and ignore it. Like, simple as that.
And I'm sorry that they called you out like that. That is not cool.
Not cool. Yep. Not cool.
Good. And you did the right thing by asking them afterwards, like, hey, next time, can we be discreet about this if you need something?
Absolutely.
Like in in-person games, we pass sticky notes and cards because we don't have private chat like Zoom and stuff. And that's how I allow my players to feel like they can pass me private notes without bringing it to everybody's attention
Sure.
when we're in an IRL situation.
Oh, sure, absolutely, and that's one of the valuable things about something like Zoom, where you can private message back and forth, all that stuff. You should see all the times the trend was like, okay, make sure you do this so that Agatha's going to have problems. No, I'm just kidding. I just completely made that up, and
It's okay. I'm here for it.
All right, so we're going to wrap up, folks, because we're running. We're running about the right time, but it is late. So, and I need to make sure that Dot goes and gets some sleep because I have to facilitate her getting rest at some point in her life. So I have to. I have to facilitate that and make
I've
that
worked
happen.
more since quarantine than I've worked in 6 months. Just want you all to know, Dot is hard at work during quarantine.
God, yeah, exactly. Quarantine, otherwise known as double the work for people like Dot. But
it's been cool though.
That's funny, Axeman. That's funny. Yeah, sometimes you have to give special stuff. You did not monopolize the questions. You asked us good questions.
You gave great questions tonight,
Exactly.
Genly. Yeah.
It was good stuff. All right, Dot, where, so the question then would be, what do you need them to know about in terms of where the next awesome thing is that you're going to be starting on your own?
Oh my gosh, that is so, right now I'm in this interesting lull.
Or Dad's Garage, like either one.
Yeah. So I'm in a personal interesting lull as I prep for the next Overlight campaign. You guys have heard me talk about that game on here. And that's a whole other tangent. I'm very excited. I do have my cast. That cast announcement will be coming out. So sometime mid-April, probably, when I rest and my job rebalances itself, I'll be launching that campaign. So you can check that out on Wednesday nights. I am excited to announce that I am running the Dad's Garage Twitch channel. So if you want to check me out during the day, that's where I'm at. If you need some laughs, come hang out with all of our improvisers as they produce weird 30-minute shows. We are also doing, I gotta get it right. We're also going to be doing some rebroadcast of a lot of our original work. This weekend, we've got Improvised Dungeons and Dragons with Mark Meir, who's the voice of Captain Shepard. So that's a rebroadcast we've got. That was the weekend of DragonCon, and I remember that show was freaking great. So that's Friday night at 8, and then Saturday night at 8 we have Wicket, which is our most popular musical we've ever done. Wicket is just what it sounds like. It's a Wicked parody following Wicket from Star Wars, the Ewok. So a very fun little Star Wars parody. We're expecting very large turnout for that show, so definitely come check that out. 8:00 EDT. Over on Dad's Garage ATL. And then throughout the week, just for laughs and shits and giggles, you can find me there doing that. But if you want to know more about it, I have a little article. The local WABE group who handles our NPR station here in Atlanta did a little interview with me about launching the Twitch channel for the theater and what this has meant. So it's been, I'm a proud little Dot, but I'm also a tired little Dot. So I appreciate any and all of the support, and my job, unlike a lot of artists, has been so supportive and has chosen not to fire our cast and to work harder so that we can continue to pay our freelance artists even while our doors are closed. So this is a really important thing for me personally, to see our theater kind of overcome in a time of when a lot of other ones are closing their doors. So yeah.
The theaters that come out on the other side of this who manage to survive will be in a better place. It's just I feel sad for all the ones that aren't able to make it. But
it's a terrifying time. It's a scary time for both freelance artists and small arts organizations that rely on it. So, but thanks, Axeman. I'm going to push through to the other side. And like I said, opportunity and chaos is what the name of the game is right now.
There you go. Well, it is always an enormous pleasure, of course, to have Little Red Dot as my co-host on this show and on The Art Vocalist and on Infinity and Beyond. And you will see her again next month in those capacities. So you should follow her on her own channel, and you should also follow Dad's Garage ATL, Dad's Garage ATL, and check them out as they do these awesome shows and support the arts and all that good stuff. But thank you, Dot. Go get some rest, and thank you as always, and I will catch you very soon in the next, soon. Next month.
Bye.
Bye. All right. That was good stuff. So you don't get the Dad's Garage. Oh, I see. Well, that's it could be very much a culture thing. At first I was like, don't get, what do you mean? Then I understood. I was like, All right, folks. So that is going to do it for me for this evening on this special Thursday night show of the Masters of the Dungeon. Always happy to have Little Red Dot with us. And again, for those of you who missed it, I do want to mention that we had that little Reddit thread that hopefully some people were able to jump over and do. I think it's probably coming to an end now, but I will post it up there just in case, which is going to be right. Hello, Mrs. Dunsel. Which is going to be right here. That was Athos Arts, my publisher for Icarus and Jelinek. So go over there and give them some love if you can. Again, they were starting today, so there's the deal with that. And for those of you who missed this announcement, next month, in April, starting on Friday the 24th at 3 p.m. Eastern, we have the debut of Pyron Jade, who will be GMing, or DMing, I should say, a new 5e campaign called War of the Burning Sky. This will go from 3 p.m. to usually 6 or 7 p.m. Eastern on Friday. I will still be streaming on Friday evening, but this will be happening during the day, and it will be European-friendly hours. She already has a cast in place, and I'm very excited to see how that all kind of goes out. And it's going to be another example of a game that we're doing to kind of build our content on this channel, because I want to have more content on the channel that doesn't just involve myself. So we've got Emberwind, we've got Community D&D, we've got with Shadowed Mage, we have got the new one now coming up with Burning Sky, War of the Burning Sky, hopefully the return of Hearts of Wulin in short order, and other things that I've got planned that are coming up. So there are plans in the works. So yeah, I'll talk to Sod about that. I was glad that he was able to do the Sword Coast Legends thing. That was nice of him to do. He kind of did that at just sort of a last second thing because of Emberwind. The thing is, I have to be careful with Sod because Sod is such a nice guy, like the nicest guy, and is so good at, like, basically I think of him as like an assistant producer on this channel. And Sod is so willing to do stuff. I mean, behind the scenes stuff that you guys don't even know, that he has his own channel too. And I don't know. I don't want to put him in a situation where I'm like, hey, can you do a bunch of stuff on my channel? And then like he neglects his own channel for the benefit of mine. But like but I do think that there may be an opportunity for some stuff like that down the line. Would I love to have him streaming stuff? For sure. But not if it's going to be something where he's sort of neglecting his own channel. So I'd have to consider about ways to do that. But, yeah, I mean, like, listen, that might be the kind of thing that he could maybe do even in sort of off Mondays. I don't know. We'll see. That's something I can talk more with him about. I also want to mention that what Rock God said about Terry drawing, I do need to think about that. I will put that to her. I mean, she does that on her own channel as well. I don't know if that's something where she'd want to do it on a regular basis on my channel. Right now, she just happens to have a lot of extra time because of being indoors and being, a little bit sick herself at the moment and all that. So she had time to do extra stuff. But I don't know. I will talk to her about that. I mean, obviously, you know how much of a fan of Terry I am, so anything with Terry Tunes is good. But I'll think about the Sword Coast Legends thing. It was fun. I had a chance to watch a little bit of it myself when I was doing work, actually, Echo, and it was fun to watch. So maybe we will see about that. But yeah, his tech skills with Roll20 are great, and frankly, he's better at Roll20 tech-wise than I am. And so he, I think we have a mutual respect for each other's skill set. And I think I'm good with Roll20, but I think he's very good at it. And so, I can think about that. I will consider that. But I'm going to get on out of here. I should mention, remember, tomorrow, schedule-wise in the near future, tomorrow night, or I should say later today, we'll be playing a 2-player co-op game called TikTok with Mr. Zach Clay of our Vocalist and Esper Genesis fame. So we've been talking about doing a co-op game. We're going to be doing that tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern. Then Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern, more Operencia the Stolen Sun, as we are in the home stretch of that game. When that game is finished, we'll be moving into Detroit Become Human. We're not going to finish Operencia, though, unlikely on Saturday, but I think we're only a couple sessions, maybe 3 at most, from finishing Operencia and then moving on to Detroit Become Human. So, but yeah, the game, Marinda, is called TikTok, which is a 2-player cooperative game. So yeah, I thought about that. No, it's not the same TikTok, different kind of TikTok. So what hat do I wear with that? I don't actually wear a hat in the classroom. This is because I was streaming. I was, classes online today. So I don't wear a hat in the classroom usually. So yeah, that's the answer to that. This one just happens to match the vest, so it kind of worked out. But anyway, so that's what we've got Friday, Saturday, and then remember next Tuesday, I believe next Monday actually is Emberwind, which has been rescheduled. And then next Tuesday, we have got at noon Kingdoms of Amalur, which is the Patreon Field Chat Chosen Game of the Month. And then on GOG, Pen and Pixels with Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. And then at 9 p.m. Eastern, we have our session of Esper Genesis. We only are going to be able to do one session this month, but I'm glad that we're able to get it in because I miss Esper Genesis, and I'm glad that we're getting back into it. So I was guessing a fedora. No, although I will sometimes wear on the way out of work, I will sometimes wear either my Red Sox stocking cap or my University of Glasgow winter stocking cap, especially during winter hours. So I do that as well. Oh yes, and Wednesday is CD&D. Yeah, but Wednesday is April already. So that's why I didn't bring that up, Brockcod, because Wednesday is the new month of April. So I was just talking about March. But yes, Wednesday, Community D&D, be there or be square. That is definitely the truth. And that is April 1st, April Fool's Day, but it is not an April Fool because I freaking hate April Fools. And so I am very happy that I'm going to have a game that will be lots of fun and lots of jokes and won't be a prank because pranks are stupid and I hate them. So I'm glad that we're going to be doing this. It is going to happen and it will not be an April Fool. I want to thank everyone for watching today and for being so awesome with your chat and your commentary. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Thank you to Coven Guy, to J-Rab, to Rock God for being amazing mods. Thank you as well. It's already, I know, right, Mrs. Dunsel? It feels like the last few weeks have just been a blur also on top of everything else. So I'm glad, Echo. Thank you to my wonderful subscribers as well. Coven Guy, J-Rab, Rock God, Echo Alpha X5, Nordwolf, Arenth, and Mrs. Dunsel. Always a pleasure and always appreciate the support that you folks give. Thank you so much. Thank you to my Patreon supporters as well. Thank you to Alfred Judicus, Aiden, Axeman, Commander Root, Contingent Remainder. Is that what that name is? That's a great name. I'm calling out this name. Yeah, Contingent Remainder. Good stuff. Genly, of course, Gigafrost, Jagtrist, Moobot, I guess. Marinda, Nonstop, Optic Nerve. Always good to see Optic. Rhiannon, The Stray Sheep Bar. Thank you for the host today. Trish Matz, you Christensen, V&K, Virgo Praz, West River Rat. What's up, man? How you doing, dude? And Windsock. Always a pleasure to have everyone here, and I'm glad, Genly. I always enjoy doing these because it's always a good time to hang out with Dot and to talk shop and talk about DMing and GMing and stuff like that. But that's going to do it for me. Remember to support the stream by following the channel, checking out the YouTube with !arvtube, Discord with !arvcord, Twitter with !arvtweets, website arvanellarun.com. Again, new podcast that or I shouldn't say new audio editor, Gnome, who is doing stuff for us now, doing the audio editing for us. On Twitter, he's Nomadic, so you should check him out. Good dude, and I'm really excited that he is doing our audio editing and stuff because I'm for Chris Estrad, so I'm very excited about that. On the financial side, !Arv Shop is the merchandise area where you can support us and get some cool swag for Infinity and Beyond and Adventures of Middle-earth stuff at the same time, soon to be Esper Genesis. You have got, of course, the Patreon, !Arvtreon, heading towards 350, and you got that sub button sitting right above the video window. Thank you for a couple of those of you who used that today. I think we're about 45, 46, something along those lines as well. So any support you can give there would be appreciated. And again, Icarus, my graphic novel, you can pre-order for that, and Jelinek from Athos Arts. Library is the Tales and Tomes from the Forbidden Library, which I appreciate people who can support me over there and pick up a copy of Drive-Thru RPG, especially now because the game store owned by the company Alligator Alley Entertainment's owner, Brian Dalrymple, that game store is currently shuttered. So anything we can do to help them, including the purchase of something like this product, would help them. So thanks. Aw, thank you, Christensen. I'm so glad to hear that. And last but certainly not least, we have got the Gray Shade, Gray Shade KS, which is the Kickstarter coming soon, please, so help me, because yeah, I can't wait to share some of that stuff with you as well. But that's gonna do it for me for now. I think, let me see who we've got as far as, because we have a solid group of people. Let's see, who have we got for the raid? I know who we're going to get to raid. Someone that I very seldom get to raid. So the way we do a raid is very simple. If you are not a sub, you're going to do this. The Arvanauts have landed, followed by Twitch raid, lowercase Twitch, uppercase R, lowercase AID. If you are a sub, you're going to do this. The Arvanauts have landed, followed by Arvane hype, ARVANE, all lowercase, uppercase H, lowercase YPE. Make sure to do that when you are brought over auto-magically through the power of the Twitch raid command. And this will be a person that you'll want to raid for sure. That's going to do it for me. Much love, and I will see... Oh, I'll definitely need to do that sometime. Yes, yes. I will definitely need to do that at some point, Echo, for sure. But that's going to do it for me. I'll see you folks tomorrow, or later Friday, I guess, at 9 p.m. Eastern for the co-op game of TikTok with Zach Clay, and then Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern for Operencia, and next week for more stuff, including Esper Genesis in the evenings. That's it. Everyone be good to each other, especially now. Social distance, wash your hands, stay safe, stay healthy, and everyone be good to each other. I'll catch y'all soon. Stick around for the raid. Bye for now. Oh, and thank you, most of all, I already said this, but to Little Red Dot for being awesome and for being my wonderful co-host on this show. Now, everyone, have a good night. Talk to you soon. Honk.